All right, Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Good morning, lads. How are you?
Yeah, good. It sounded there like the Sexton call was made very early in the week, the Monday and Tuesday, because he didn't train, but that maybe he would actually have been fine to play. I know Joe Schmidt has this thing about if you don't train early in the week, I'm not going to pick you irrespective of who you are, but the tree that doesn't bend will break, and we broke.
Yeah, the famous hindsight again. We're all wiser after the event. Look, I thought it was a good opportunity for Jack Carty. I thought that ultimately the forwards would have enough power and strength, and certainly given what the way they played against Scotland, that Jack Carty would be fine. Conor Murray probably had his best game in 12, 18 months against Scotland. So it was all that situation was fine. But as it turned out, someone like Sexton on the field, and I was really, really surprised. I did a commentary with Shane Williams, so sometimes you get caught up in the emotion of being an Irishman there, and kind of, are you making the right calls? Are you seeing the right things? How are they affecting you? So I asked him at half time, and he was really concerned because he said, look, Ireland are not controlling the tempo, and I cannot understand why they're not kicking enough. And they didn't kick, and they didn't play territory. And I know they get criticised a lot for maybe being a bit predictable, but their predictability was that they tried to run out over Japan, and they did try and move the ball a little bit. And there was a good few line breaks early on in the game, and Japan just kept chopping them down. And they just, after 30 minutes, I was like, oh my God, they look out on their feet at times. And that affects you in defence and attack. It affects your shape in attack when there's opportunities. And there was chances and opportunities if they realign quicker and better, and they just weren't able to do that. So, if Sexton was there, I think it just needed someone like Sexton to grasp the thing and kind of take control and call people in and say, we're playing too much rugby in the wrong areas. Let's just put it down the field, use our kicking game. One of our strengths over the last number of years, and they didn't do that. And Japan just grew in confidence as the game went on. They were fantastic, and I heard Johnny saying it. Were Japan really, really good, and were we really, really poor, or is it somewhere in the middle? It's probably somewhere in the middle. I think we're all shocked by how good Japan were. I watched them against South Africa a couple of weeks ago, and in fairness to South Africa, they just kind of, and they're probably more capable of doing it than anyone in the world. They just physically kind of battered them up front. And it was a totally different Japan team, a totally different performance. Their emotion was through the roof, and Ireland couldn't cope. I'm not making excuses. The heat was a factor, all those kind of things. Ireland should have been able to cope with all that. Now, a lot of people I've seen a lot of stuff online, and there's a lot of negativity towards the team, which sometimes baffles me because, my own mentality is I support all other sports, and I love to see Irish people doing well. Some people say the team doesn't kind of, it's full of posh schoolboy rugby players, but you couldn't meet a more grounded kind of group of people, and they just underperformed. In my opinion, they didn't underestimate Japan, because I was there at the training sessions during the week, and I always watch body language, and I think it's a very important part of preparation. And they had their game faces on. They looked very, very determined, and they always spoke about the threat and the danger. And to be fair, there's no way Joe Schmidt looked at Japan and said, well, we're just going to cruise through here and just keep it nice and easy, and I'm going to play. He picked a strong team, Ger. He picked a strong team because he was fearful of this team. But ultimately, they underperformed.
Yeah, it's not hindsight, because we've been saying it all along, but we didn't give Carty or Ross Burns, not even in the squad, and maybe to a certain extent, even over the last 2 years, Joey Carbery enough opportunity at 10. Like, it's we've arrived at a situation where we have put the game plan on the shoulders of a 10 who's very inexperienced at this level. And we talk about Sexton was making that comment about the strength of the squad, and we haven't invested enough time over the last while in a what if scenario. A what if we miss Johnny Sexton for a game against the host nation in a World Cup?
Yeah, but to be honest, Ger, most teams would struggle if their first or second choice fly half was missing, and that, like, you look at England, they're Farrell and Ford. Who else is going to play 10 for them if they get injured? You know, most teams, Bowden Barrett, probably the exception was New Zealand made that change, moving Bowden Barrett to fullback. But most teams would struggle if their first two fly halves have been injured. You know, it's very difficult to have four guys who are going to be all of the same level. I think Carberry has come on so much in the last number of years. He did get game time in November International, Six Nations. He got injured in this Six Nations. And I think Jack Carty and Ross Byrne were the two kind of backup third choice fly halves, and they were the ones kind of going head to head to try and see if they could get that position of the third fly half. So again, the problem I think with Johnny Sexton is he hasn't been able to get a consistent run in the team, even in the Six Nations. He'd no rugby played before that English game. He missed a number of games before the Welsh game as well, and it's just you'd love to see him get a run of games and get the flow of the team going again. But I thought Carberry should have come on earlier. Jack Carty's a very talented footballer, but I think Carberry's 3 years younger than him, but he's more experienced at that level. And Carberry did try, but I think at that stage, all Japan did at that stage was fan out. They had no, on numerous occasions, they didn't send anyone into the breakdown. They just fanned out, and we kept playing, trying to pass, and we were just getting closed out around that 13 channel. So we were naive in our game management. And when I say, it's easy for me to say up in the stand, well, don't do this and don't do that, and why are we doing that? I think we were just naive and lacked a little bit of control and leadership. And tactically, the players have got to do that in the field. I played on teams that had a lot of experience, and O'Connell, O'Gara, these guys would just call in the forwards and say, well, we're keeping it tight now for the next 15 minutes, or Rog would say, we want the ball quicker, we're trying to get it to Howlett more, or we're going to attack what. And I don't see those kind of huddles. I don't see that kind of change on the run. But look, psychologically, if you have a big win, it's always the week after, isn't it? What's the emotion going to be like? And it's hard to get that emotion high. And Japan were through the roof. It was unbelievable. I honestly, I know our performance was not good enough. And the players, the management, everybody deserves criticism. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But Japan were incredible. They were just incredible to watch. The way they controlled the ball, the way they had a scrum. They were 16-12. They were 16-12 up, a scrum with 10 minutes left on their 22. Any Northern Hemisphere team would have passed that straight back to their fly half and kicked it out to touch. They ran the ball up the field and forced that other penalty where Angus Gardner penalised Conor Murray, and they were so confident. I spoke to their fitness coach before the start of the game, and at that stage he's not going to give me anything that's tactically going to change the game. He just said, look, I think we're the fittest team in the World Cup, and if we can hold on to the ball, we can beat anyone, he said. I was kind of blown away by their belief, and Jamie Joseph said it as well. So what they did is they just built phase after phase after phase. Now, interestingly, if you look, I watched back the game a couple of times, they never really hurt us with massive line breaks, or it was just the period before the try where they got the scrum, Chris Farrell runs into CJ Stander. There was a few moments there and just poor mistakes from Ireland that gave them confidence and belief that they had a chance, that you just sensed that they looked around at each other and said, we can win this, and they grew in confidence. So they were brilliant. Ireland were really poor.
Joe Schmidt had mentioned Angus Gardner in the build-up to the game, saying that Ireland had fallen on the wrong side in the Six Nations in the game against Wales. Alison Miller today in The Independent is pointing out that that might have been a bit of a red rag to a bull. Not saying that he would have automatically been influenced by the fact that he was called out by Joe Schmidt, but certainly whatever pressure Schmidt was trying to put on Angus Gardner by bringing it up in the build-up to the match, it definitely didn't work, because Gardner didn't referee Ireland easy, or there was no sense of him kind of like, oh, I'm on my toes here. It was like, yeah, that's a foul, that's a foul, that's a foul, like, it didn't work.
No, it didn't work. And, look, I think he's very frustrated. He's had issues with Angus Gardner before. The game against Wales in Cardiff, there was numerous incidents in that game that infuriated the Irish management. And I think there'll be a lot of them after the game on Saturday as well. And it does make a difference. Penalties, they change the flow at times there. And I think he has a right with some of the calls. There's absolutely no doubt, having watched it back. There was a few there that there was midfield offsides that he gave against Ireland where there wasn't the consistency where he gave it against Japan. There was a lot of times Japan were really, really close to being offside or offside. And it had an effect because it was a tight game. It would have had no effect if Ireland controlled the ball themselves. So it's one that would have frustrated and Japan deserved the win, I think, but it probably wasn't the best idea speaking about that with Angus Gardner during the week because referees are only human too, and there was just a couple that I would have questioned myself that he gave against Ireland where he didn't give against Japan.
Yeah. Look, we all know the stat that no one's ever won the World Cup losing a pool stage game, so I guess records are made to be broken. If we're going to win the World Cup anyway, we'd have to get past the quarter-final, which we've never done in the past. But this is beginning to feel a bit more 07 than 2011. At least in 2011, we were all like, we're building momentum through the tournament to the point where, we could do no wrong until we got hockeyed by Argentina in a quarter-final. Like, what's your assessment now about where Ireland are going to go out of this tournament?
Well, I did say to you about Japan a few weeks ago, how dangerous that game would have been. I've said it a number of times. Now, I wrote a piece in the Indo on Saturday, and I thought we'd win by 15, 20 points. And, am I crazy to think that? The spread was plus 21.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
Plus 21. And that's just based on the evidence where we were the last week. So it was a shock result and a very damaging result to Ireland because I said this right before the game. When I got to the stadium on Saturday, I said, you know what? I'd love to see Ireland build that confidence and belief and kick on from Scotland. But you know what? I'm now saying a 1 point win here will suit perfect. Any sort of a win here. Because I just got a feeling from the crowd and looking at the Japanese players coming out in the warm-up and speaking to the fitness coach and things like that, they were convinced that they would go very, very close to winning and that they could win. So I think it's another harsh lesson for this Irish group, and it's one that's psychologically has to cause damage. There's no doubt about it. And right from the start, Ger, we said, look, ultimately it's probably a quarter-final scenario come home after that, which would be very, very negative, but it's even going to be more negative now because they'll say, well, the predictable quarter-final happened, exit, but Japan also beat us as well, so It's been a disastrous World Cup.
Yeah.
Now, I'm normally a glass half empty man with everyday life. With everyday life, I'm normally unfortunately, that's my psyche. I'm pessimistic about a lot of stuff. But you know what? Me playing professional sport for 15 years and playing in soccer and GAA all my life, I always felt that, when you have adversity, when your back is to the wall, that shows true character. And they've got to find a bit of character now. And they're capable of it. That's the good news for them. They are, but they have to quickly figure out if a team any team, the template is there now, and it's 4 losses in a year. So if a team comes up against Ireland now, well, non-rugby people will even be able to tell you this. Physically match Ireland, go after the set piece, attack them at the breakdown, and be in their faces, and they don't really play in a way that can cut you open.
That's the big question, right? So we were chatting about this earlier on. It was like the same thing that has beaten us again and again and again beat us at the weekend, which would suggest that we haven't done enough work on trying to overcome.
It would suggest that the players are going back to the process when they're under pressure, whereas they just got to play heads-up rugby. They just got to go for the times. Like, in fairness to Ringrose at the start of the game, he's making line breaks, he's At one stage, he cut back inside. He should have passed. I think we would have got a third try if he passed it. Carney and Chris Farrell were outside him. They're just not executing in those situations where just give the pass, and tracking the inside. So that's why I say it has to be player driven. You know, I've sat in dressing rooms, honestly, Ger, where coaches there's not much more coaches can say or do. I know they give you the tactics, they give you the template, but sometimes you have to go, let's just go for it here and play a bit more when we're under pressure. How do we learn from these situations where we're getting smashed around and we're getting frustrated by teams who are trying to stop us playing? Really, the template is stop Ireland playing, and then they can play or they don't have an answer. But, you know, if they look, ultimately there's a lot of psychological damage. You know, it's very difficult. But I still believe if they get to a quarter-final and they heal a little bit, they probably won't win a quarter-final, but I believe they're capable of it. But I just, there's a lot of damage done after the weekend. So ultimately, I think it may be an exit, and probably will be the exit at the quarter-final again, with added baggage after losing against Japan.
How many changes do you make for the game against Russia on Thursday?
I just think anyone who hasn't played, I think you need to change. There's no point in playing Keane Healy, Tyke Furlong, Rory Best again, James Ryan or Henderson. I think there needs to be a few guys in the back row. Byrne maybe playing in the back row. One of the second rows is probably going to have to be involved. I think you make a good few changes. You've got to be careful in the sense that you don't want to kind of disband the whole group, but I think you make a good few changes, and you know, ultimately now they've got to go and play the team that hopefully will play quarterfinals, whether it be against New Zealand or South Africa. They'll probably have to play against Samoa now, so it's just very difficult for them. And I think one of the points that you made earlier, and a lot of people are saying this, did the players disrespect Japan? Was there too much talk about South Africa? There wasn't from the players. Joe Schmidt all week played it down. He said, I don't want to talk about quarterfinals. I don't want to talk about South Africa. It was the media. It was me. I'm guilty of it. All the other journalists are guilty of it. So we're the ones who kind of hype this thing up. It's not the players. So I think it's unfair sometimes. And the narrative is, and the online opinions suggest all the players disrespected Japan. They're looking at a South Africa game. Not once. All week they played it down. They said, we don't want to talk about South Africa. So it's the media and it's the public that kind of generated that hype, which, so I think it's unfair on the players. So
I would agree. Look, just on that point, I would agree. I don't think that the players and the coaching staff took them for granted. I would argue that the issue is that Japan just did what England have done, not as well. They did what Wales have done, not as well. And we didn't have a way. We didn't appear to have worked on a plan with those players to win a game where the opposition are going to do exactly as you said. Go after the set piece, physically match us, have good line speed, like all the very basic things that now you would assume every team is always going to do against Ireland into the future, because that's the template for beating us. We didn't have enough in the locker to overcome that, which is the troubling bit from a management perspective and from a player's perspective.
And sometimes players, the word underestimate the opposition. I don't think you underestimate the opposition, because it's very, very dangerous territory to underestimate anybody. Fiji underestimated Uruguay last week. They did not respect the fixture, and their World Cup was destroyed with that loss. I think we can recover from this. I think you sometimes can underestimate the madness or the passion or the physicality of your opposite number. I played at number 6, so sometimes, it's always a battle. Beat your opposite number, and if everybody does that and tries to do that and you win most of those battles, you get on top. I played against number 6s, and I think, is he up for today? Is he mad? Is he emotionally through the roof? And sometimes, you get those answers when you put in a tackle, and I think the Irish players underestimated how hard the Japanese hit them, how passionate they were, and how much of an effort they put in everywhere across the board. And I think that's a lot of the problem as well, that So the individual kind of underestimation was probably with how physical Japan could be, because the perception and they're a smaller side than most. But another point as well, Ger, is people say this team is not all Japanese players. There was 7 or 8, half the team is from New Zealand, South Africa, Australia. We speak a lot about project players as well. They've specifically targeted this match as well, and they've said that. But 16 of their 31 players were born outside of Japan. So maybe it's not the biggest shock in the world. They're full of Australians and New Zealanders and South Africans, as well as some brilliant Japanese players who play with the Sunwolves, who've been disbanded now. So again, I'll go back, because people will jump on this and say, well, excuses and that doesn't matter, we should still win. We should still have won that game. There is absolutely no doubt about it. And, I'm concerned. I think everybody is. And, maybe we're not good enough. Maybe we got ahead of ourselves and believe it, But look, I always put a bit of caution there, no matter who I'm playing. And I was cautious about this game for a long time. And maybe we all got fooled a little bit by, we gave them the credit last week and they were fantastic, and they deserve the criticism this week.
Yeah, that's fair enough. What do we want from Scotland Samoa? I'm torn between Scotland getting effectively knocked out or Scotland suddenly being reborn and trying to beat Japan.
Yeah, we want Scotland to win and get back on track. And we play Samoa on the Saturday, and Samoa is on the Sunday night. So they'll have a lot of Irish viewers for that game, that last game. I think we want Scotland to try and keep going, and because
the Japan-Scotland game's the last one, yeah.
Yeah, it's the last one, so that's going to be incredibly big, and that'll decide who plays. Who plays? I didn't say we play. I said who plays. Now, Johnny, you're listening there. Who plays in the quarterfinal? Or whether it's Ireland, Scotland, or Japan. But it's all kind of thrown up in the air at the moment, isn't it? I think Ireland go out and beat Russia now on Thursday, try and get a smile on their faces again. And if I was Joe Schmidt, I wouldn't go down the road of actually completely rollicking them with one of these video sessions where everybody's called out and there's a load of anger and there's a load of pointing the finger. I genuinely think now at this stage, because they've had that this year, they had it probably after England, they had it after Wales, they certainly had it after Twickenham a couple of weeks back. I think they need a little arm around each other now and just try and stick together. And who knows? Ultimately, the expectations of 12 months ago are well and truly dampened.
I suppose, is that not the worry that, as you mentioned, we've had 4 defeats this year and 3 of them were pretty demoralising, really. Like, how many times can you go back to that mental well and think, actually, we're okay? Because you just imagine psychologically now they must be pretty much questioning where they're at.
Confidence, Johnny, is a massive thing. And I think it's been dented too many times. That's why I think, they're on the back foot now. There's no doubt about it. I thought last week I thought the 2 Welsh games, I said they're healing, they're getting better, they're getting a bit of their mojo back. Their body language is good. They're playing good rugby again. And they took 2 steps forward and about 4 back. So, they have a choice to make themselves. The reality is it's a massive worry and it's psychologically very, very damaging. So unless they find something different in the next couple of weeks, it's going to be a very, very disappointing World Cup again. So that's the reality of it.
All right, Alan, great stuff. I hope you're enjoying yourself other than that.
I'm not really, Ger. I've done 5 games done in a week, so I'm prepping for Georgia, Uruguay, Fiji, all these teams, and getting pronunciations, trying to get them right. So match, travel day, prep day, captain's run, match. So it's been pretty chaotic in the last week, but I'm off to Kobe tomorrow now, so a couple of days there, and hopefully we'll move along Friday then a little bit happier after what happens against Russia.
You enjoy those first world problems anyway.
It's very tough, Johnny. It's very tough. And do you know what? It's a little bit humid as well. A small little bit humid for my liking.
We haven't heard anything about the humidity at all. I don't know.
On that though, how bad was it in the game? Because if you're under pressure, the last thing you want is to be pouring sweat in a kind of an alien environment.
It was unbelievable, honestly, and it was. I'm running up and down to the commentary position a few times, and honestly, you're completely out of breath. Now they prepared for it, and as best they could with the warm weather stuff in Portugal. But unless you go to a place where the humidity is that high, it was a shock to the system, I think. It wasn't as bad as in Tokyo last week. It was really bad down in Shizuoka on Saturday. I actually did the game yesterday, Georgia and Uruguay, and it was 32 degrees and 80% humidity. I'd never experienced anything. I think I did probably in Fiji and Samoa back in 2003, but this was just so hard on the players. They actually have to have water breaks every 20 minutes.
Right.
World Rugby spoke before the game and said, look, give them water breaks every 20 minutes. So we 2 stoppages in that game because it was so hot. So that wasn't great from on Saturday anyway.
All right, Quinny, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.